The polygamous sex, a man's right to the other woman. With this ring I thee adopt. Compared with a child of one's own, which one protects automatically, a woman makes a somewhat inadequate object of one's protective instinct. When a man takes her on as his charge, he does it not instinctively but consciously, by persuading himself that here is a helpless creature who needs him. Every woman is therefore in competition with every other inadequate, non-instinctual, protégé. Orphans, the sick, the old, the mentally disabled, the poor, young pups and stray cats are basically all much more in need of protection than women. How to distract a man's attention from all these potential competitors and concentrate it exclusively upon the woman seeking to arouse his latent protective instinct is therefore her major problem. This is not as hard as it seems at first. Most people practice altruistic love for a reward of some kind, as we have said, cash, prestige, companionship, eternal life. Women also have an interesting reward to offer for the protection they seek. They are the only kind of inadequate protégé that is in a position to satisfy a man's other social instinct, his sex drive. From the man's point of view, this is the prize reward of them all. But a woman seeking protection primarily can never be an adequate sex partner because she lacks one prerequisite for that, intellectual equality. But since most men hardly ever meet ideal sex partners, feminine women who are nevertheless as intelligent as men, the man really has no choice. If he is not to be empty-handed, he has to settle for altruistic love for a pseudo-child, and for rational love instead of sexual love. He compromises on a concoction, part ward, part sex mate, part child, part woman. She may not be the love of my dreams, he thinks, but I can still take her to bed, and besides, she needs me. To be his child, the woman doesn't resemble him enough, but she is weaker than he, physically and mentally. To be his ideal sex partner, she is not sufficiently on a par with him intellectually. However, she looks sufficiently different from him to be attractive. In other words, rather than leave both of his social instincts unsatisfied, a man will put up with playing the father to an adult who occasionally lets him have her body for sexual purposes. Since the average man cannot find the woman who will be a true marriage partner at all, he accepts one of many being offered for adoption by her parents, and in a grandiose ceremony vows to take her natural father's place in providing for her henceforth. If the priest or registrar were to ask him whether he was prepared to take this woman as his child, he might not even notice. When the girl in white with the bouquet says yes, the man knows perfectly well that he has adopted her, for better or for worse. The child will henceforth bear her new father's name and live on his money. To keep him from having any ideas about his search for a woman, she also plays the lover from time to time. After the birth of her first child, her ideal protégé, and his as well, the power of the adopted daughter is so well established that she runs little risk of losing the adoptive father to a real woman. The role of sex partner, originally used as bait, tends to be neglected at this point. Soon the day will come when only the presence of their children will remind the couple that, once upon a time, they used to sleep together. The power of the colder partner. Once a woman has opted for the role of the child, instead of lover, the next step is predetermined. A child must not show too great an interest in sex, on pain of losing both credibility and a child's privileges. A woman who values her status as protégé, therefore, must keep her sex drive under control. She must be in a position to make conscious use of her sexuality for her purposes, i.e. to win a man who appears suited to play her father, rather than a man who excites and confuses her senses and her mind. And she must be able to refuse herself to her intended protector until he adopts her or at least commits himself clearly to such an intention. To see primarily the sex partner in a man is the end of her power over him. It means losing the motive of making him her protector. What good is a lover restrained by protective feelings and being quite as dependent on him, sexually, as he is on her? To stay stupid is, as we have said, a piece of cake. It costs no effort at all. To stay cold, on the other hand, requires considerable self-discipline, but women evidently find that it pays, just the same. Not only are men and women born with the same mental endowment, the same instinct of self-preservation and caring for their brood, but they also inherit the same predisposition to an active sex life. But sexual cravings can be conditioned. Nuns and priests are good examples of that. Only nuns, being women, typically begin their training much earlier than their male counterparts. Which is why we hear of far fewer missteps and scandals among them. The rest of womankind is under no constraint to practice such total self-control. On the contrary, total frigidity would hamper them, and it might lead to extremes such as refusing sex altogether, even as bait for attracting a protector. How easily the conditioning of the sex drive can lead to frigidity is revealed by a recent opinion poll taken among thousands of Italian women of every social class queried about their sexual attitudes. 36% of these women between the ages of 20 and 50 expressed a total lack of interest in marital sex. In fact, they said they would prefer giving it up altogether. So high a degree of sexual frigidity is excessive and rather disruptive. What matters is only to be the more frigid of the two partners, because the power is always in the hands of the colder sex partner. Partial frigidity, on the other hand, no longer entails any disadvantages nowadays. Frigidity used to mean that a woman got out of bed without having had an orgasm. But in the era of Playboy, a man can feel sure of his sexual prowess only if he can bring even a frigid woman, a woman, that is, who does not desire him, to climax. How to do it he can learn from numerous popular handbooks. Even though sexual climax induced exclusively by mechanical titillation can be achieved by anyone including the woman herself, the male of our time is not above pluming himself on his skills as a mechanic, as an integral part of his masculine attractions. What does it profit a woman, one might ask, to lose a lover and gain a father? The vast numbers of women who marry older men, even homosexuals, are answer enough. There are many reasons, certainly, why young women will take on men in their 60s, but sex cannot be one of them. A man of 60 simply cannot be physiologically in condition to satisfy the sexual needs of a normal 20 or 30-year-old woman. If he does satisfy her, it must be that she has no such needs, i.e. it is to her credit, not to his. That a long history of sexual experience makes it mean more attractive is a view widely held by men, always reconfirmed when a well-to-do older gentleman wins the heart of a young girl. It is a view without real foundation. The most unequivocal evidence that women are the more frigid sex is the absence of male prostitution. The few bordellos for women that can be found in some great cities are being perverted to their own uses by homosexuals, for lack of a female clientele. This doesn't mean, of course, that there are no women at all who are as interested in sex as the average man. But such women find takers all over the place. They don't need to go into a bordello, they live in one. The feminists say that no middle-class woman will go looking for commercial sex, because she is too inhibited. But when it comes to gratifying her desires, the middle-class woman in particular has been remarkably uninhibited. How many women of the upper and middle classes sport fur coats, for instance, though everyone knows by what barbaric methods these pelts are obtained? The annual massacres of seals for the purpose are a staple of the feature writers. The highly popular broadtail is made from the skins of unborn lambs. The caracal mother sheep is made, in the most brutal ways, to miscarry or abort her young. Depending on the way a coat is made, an average of a dozen such abortions go into the making of it. It is absurd to think that a human being who knows what it is to carry a child in her own body, yet feels no scruples about dressing herself in the skins of aborted animal embryos, could possibly feel inhibited about entering a whorehouse in order to satisfy a quite natural sexual need.